I hope you're all very excited for this very special session because it is our partner space. Coming with us, coming in front of you right now is our dear partner for this conference, World Economic Forum Strategic Intelligence, to tell you more about the whole concept of strategic intelligence and also how we can coming to the stage is representing World Economic Forum Strategic Intelligence, Abhinav Chugh. Abhinav, over to you.
Thank you, Sumedha, and I'm very excited to have this discussion and briefing with all of you. Just as an introduction, I'm Abhinav, and I have been with the World Economic Forum for about 4 years now. I'm originally from India, from New Delhi, and I'm an anthropologist by training. And yeah, the topic of this discussion is quite interesting because we've been developing this practice with around the world that we work with in our networks at the World Economic Forum. And we've really been working at identifying what are the problems that leaders around the world face within their context, at the local level, at the global level. And to capture that, we've developed this platform, what we think is a very dynamic platform, because we make sure that we try our best to keep it up to date on a daily basis, to see if tools like this can really help their blind spots. I would really appreciate if you could make this a very interactive discussion as well, and please feel free to shoot your questions at any point throughout this discussion, and I'll be very happy to engage in that as well. But just as a quick overview of what I mean by building strategic intelligence, and maybe I'll share my screen a bit as well. Here we go. So the concept really emerged, and I don't know how much all of you know about the World Economic Forum, but are you able to see my screen? Okay. All right. The concept really emerged after discussions such as this earlier into the physical space and then soon into the virtual space like this as well. But there was no way for us to capture the synthesis of these conversations in a format which would be of use to participants, to leaders, for experts at a later stage. And we wanted to create a means for that thought leadership to be recorded and organized in a way which would be of use later on as well. Mean quite a broad term in that sense, but I think in essence what it really comes down to is the usage of the terminology that you use in your everyday discussions, and how you build your conversations, and how you frame issues, and how you frame the context of these issues. So essentially the methodology over here for our platform is how different issues are interconnected to one another, how they impact each other, how these factors have influence, lead to transformation in each other, how, for example, an issue like migration, it's not something to be just understood in a silo, but it has consequences in terms of peace and security, in terms of humanity, and how it affects governance, for example. So I think that we realize that there has to be a format, a visual format, which really helps users, which helps leaders understand that when we think about migration, I'm bringing this up, for example, because this has been quite a sensitive topic in the past many years, where it's been a word which is in many parts of the world has been associated with a sense of fear. But people often forget the context through which this word got mainstream and got attached meaning. And that's why I keep stressing on how we use words and the meaning that is attached to them, and how we can we need to build a system in which when we present certain terms, we need to associate certain terms to truly explain the associated context with it as well. So that led to us kind of working on developing a platform, which we use the term contextual intelligence for it. We call it contextual intelligence because we worked on developing a system which used a combination of machine intelligence and human intelligence both together to create a powerful visual format. Where we use machine intelligence, for example, is that we first started off with identifying which are the sources of truth, of integrity, of knowledge around the world, which we can capture and put forward in the most democratic, decentralized sense. What are the most open sources, open knowledge sources out there, which users can access but are not getting enough visibility? And we combine that with one of the many advantages of being at the World Economic Forum is that we get to work with some leading experts around the world. So tapping into those networks to essentially collaborate with them and see how we can frame issues in the most holistic, coherent way possible. And what that led to was us developing a hybrid model, which what you see over here is what we call a transformation map, which is essentially a monitoring framework through which we formulate what are the key issues around a particular topic, which are essentially factors of transformation and how they influence the particular issue, and how it's interconnected with all these other issues that we see in transformation in the world right now. So again, I think there's an abundance of information out there in the world. It's not always the most legitimate information. And also with an overload of information, I think what leads to it as an issue for a lot of leaders and policymakers is that it becomes more cluttered than any form of strategic information, and there's no way the information is presented that is consumable or can be used in a format which can be leveraged for any kind of decision making. And often, I don't know if a lot of you might agree with me on this as well, but a lot of how journalism these days is based is on a lot of speculation. But what we don't see is a lot of journalism explaining the context. And even when they do explain the context, it's for an audience which I would say is not a mass audience really. So I think it's not a very inclusive form of communication. And that is a problem that we tried to tackle over here with strategic intelligence and enable users to anticipate trends, understand the strategic context, and prioritize what is important. And that led to us having over 270 topics being featured, all collaborated, curated by universities, think tanks, research institutions, international organizations, updated daily with information curated by these trusted sources. So we're essentially trying to form an ecosystem and which is completely open access, free of charge, for users to leverage this information and use it for their strategic planning and foresight purposes. Just to dig into this a bit more, and why we bring up the issue of using strategic intelligence, particularly for leadership. Now, I think in our day-to-day lives or in whatever context that you're working in, I think you might come across a lot of situations in which you stumble across issues that you might not be an expert in, but people might be relying on you to have a certain level of command or information about a particular issue. and oftentimes it's hard to understand where we should start and where we should kind of make the first step in understanding the context of a particular issue that we're not perhaps an expert in. And I think that's what that for that you need the right tools to enable that journey for you. And I think that's what that's why we made this platform open to everybody. So if you want to to understand a particular issue, we and in terms of the issues that we cover, we have everything relating to global issues ranging from geopolitics, geoeconomics, the SDG related issues, to more social policy, social equity issues relating to human rights, social justice, inequality. So essentially, topics which you might stumble across in day-to-day conversations or in your leadership journey. And what you see over here on your screen, that is a tool which would essentially help you to understand a basic understanding of a particular topic and the context by an augmented knowledge feed on the right hand side, which ranges from publications, videos, updated daily from these sources. And perhaps just to stop sharing my screen and just diving deeper into a more conversation on why I'm stressing more on strategic foresight in this case is because I think currently as we see issues being framed across the world, and I mean right now I think with COP26, for example, in the coming week, um, there's a lot of buzz around whether we will form any vital agreements relating to climate change at the global level. There's a lot of discussion whether on the optimism or pessimism of the whole conference in itself, and the participation or non-participation of certain countries. And I think that is what we are seeing in the current. But I think why we need to put a strategic foresight lens and kind of have a more systems thinking, systems leadership approach to issues like this is to also understand how events like COP26, for example, have cascading effects and have an impact on many generations to come. And how this is not just, for example, in this case, and just taking it as an example, that this is not just a climate change issue that we would be discussing at this conference, but when we put a systems thinking lens to it, which is uh, essentially what we worked on developing, we have to also understand that this has impacts on education, on mental health, on geopolitics, on peace and security in a lot of nations. What is kind of often underscored is how the delay in actions for an issue like climate change could lead to a humanitarian emergency just in the very next year in a lot of countries. And we already see that happening where a lot of countries do face climate emergency. When they face climate emergency, that leads to a humanitarian emergency in these situations. And while a lot of rich countries can develop the necessary infrastructure and protect themselves from these climate disasters, a lot of countries cannot. And what is also being discussed at, for example, at this conference is how we can develop a mechanism for these countries to develop that infrastructure. So I'm just to kind of say that it's not just about one particular issue. I think we have when we talk about the future of all of these issues, it has to be understood from this very holistic perspective to really truly understand the many impacts that we can anticipate. And once we truly understand these systemic impacts of these often siloed and issues framed in silos, um, that kind of often leads to blind spots and for a lot of decision makers, and a lot of short-sightedness in whether it be government policy, whether it be in the private sector as well. I think that often comes back as a major drawback, and that I think that's what's kind of led to a lot of the global challenges that we face right now in the world as well. Um, and I think, I mean, just we've been working with a lot of leaders and policymakers using this tool to see if this kind of methodologies, this kind of thinking, has been of use to them, and how they've perhaps used it. And I think this is still in a quite a nascent stage, and we're still working on kind of expanding the use of this kind of an approach to with the right audience, with the right users, and users who would be able to. I think an approach like this can be leveraged by different people at different levels of power as well. So it really depends who the audience and who the users are for such a tool. But I think this has helped not only a lot of people in their decision making, but also for a lot of people who are in practice, who are in training, who are in the public service, for understanding the context and the broader overview of issues. Just as an example, we recently worked with the National School of Government in South Africa, and we piloted the use of this tool with 12 departments of the ministry over there to see how public servants, for example, can use such innovative tools and such innovative thinking in their areas of practice. Um, and while formulating policies at the local level and at the state level over there, using such an approach. And the feedback that we received is that it's really helped in kind of broadening their perspective, not just by the kind of holistic approach, but also through finding the right information and the right trusted sources, and having the ability to build capacity to find these sources of truth, sources of knowledge. And I think we're now trying to see how this can be kind of scaled up in other developing countries where there hasn't been enough of an investment in public infrastructure or on such digitalized tools for especially public institutions which lack a degree of investment. So just to close off, and then I'll be very happy to have a discussion with some of you who might have some questions about this. But I think overall, in the broader context, beyond just the strategic intelligence practice that we have at the World Economic Forum, from a broader forum perspective as well, I think what makes sense in what has kind of led to the synthesis and genesis and continues to influence this is the institutions kind of, I mean, from the beginning, our approach has been to develop a multi-stakeholder approach in everything that we do, and the importance of public-private cooperation and involving stakeholders from the local community level, from the private sector, from civil society, from government, and bringing them together in a way to ensure that not only everybody's perspectives are heard, understood, and presented and taken into account, but when we bring all of those perspectives together and make sure everybody's voice is included, that is what truly leads to developing the right discourse for topics, for issues, and for global issues when we talk about them, when we talk about whether in panels, in briefings, in reports that we generate, white papers, or any kind of knowledge output that we produce. That really resonates with a lot of people when they try to understand an issue, because it makes sense for them. It doesn't feel like the discourse is between the elites of the world and those who have been left behind, but it is a more inclusive way of developing thought and leadership. And on that, yes, I'll just take a pause and hand it over back to you, Samantha, perhaps.
Thanks a lot, Abhinav, for that. I will open the floor for questions if anyone would like to ask a question to Abhinav about strategic intelligence, World Economic Forum, or the platform. The floor is open. Okay, Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Abhinav, for this introduction, especially talking about World Economic Forum and also discover the platform and all the website there. It's such amazing. I just curious, it's like, because right now we are having like the 21, like the countries and territories, like the young leaders here. And usually we in ISEC, we also have lots of like the social proposal competition, or least kind of the also like analysis event, and ensure encourage youth to also talk about how we can bring this solution to moving forward. I just curious is like if they are interested in like the working with World Economic Forum in the like the entity in the countries or territories level, like how does it work when you work with other like the social civil like the activities, or even work as other companies partner, maybe like the, if they're interested in it, I think we can have like this furthermore conversation in the future.
Yeah. So at a more regional level, we of course work with the government a lot, but I don't know if you know about the World Economic Forum's Global Shapers community. And I think they're the ones who work more at the local level. And oh, wonderful. So Sumedha can tell you more about that as well. But yes, so I mean, we have hubs in a lot of regions. I think, I mean, we have over 10,000, if I'm not wrong. And I think they're a good starting point for at the local level engaging with the World Economic Forum. And I think they're great advocates for a lot of the work that we do. So I think perhaps I'm not as familiar with the work of the shapers as some of the shapers here might be. So they can tell you more about that.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Okay, Michael?
Hello, thank you for the presentation. I would like to ask you for your thoughts regarding the role of misinformation and of politically charged media. In my home country, one of the things that I've seen over the last few months as the vaccine is rolled out is this proliferation of anti-vax media, and honestly, I feel quite helpless to in the face of that, because the rhetoric tends to be quite hateful and fixated on certain weird distortions of the concept of freedom. But that is just one small thing under, you could look at many things for examples of this. I want to know what your thoughts are on that insofar as strategic intelligence relates to it.
Yeah, I think I mean it is one of the most defining issues of our generation presently, and what's truly shaping public policy, governance, and a lot of, I mean, the hateful rhetoric, you rightly said, is emerging from such misinformation. But I think it's in what I have to say is that I think it's due to lack of responsibility on part of a lot of these social media platforms, and I think they are now being taken into account more and more. So, however, the damage has already been done, and the culture of misinformation and what is true and what is not, I think it's already been perpetuated throughout society, and I think this is not just located in one particular region of the world. I think it's like a global issue at this point of time. And that is why I think, I mean, I was reiterating the point again and again about the integrity of sources and what are our sources of truth, and what do we believe in, what we can't believe. And I think that is why we need to place more value on factual information, on integrity of sources, on developing a culture where at an educational level and at a leadership level for institutions, organizations, and at the government level, it might be a bit harder at this point, but how we consume information as well, and how we are critical of information, and how we must develop a culture of fact checking. And I think that's underway in certain parts of the world, but
Thank Michael. Prayog, over to you.
Yeah. Hi, Abhinav. Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm just exploring the platform and I simply love it. Like, I mean, I used to watch World Economic Forum videos to get a lot of information, but now this platform is something altogether different. So, my name is Prayog. I'm from Mumbai. I'm also colleague with Sumita on the regional office. So, in this room, there are like 20. We represent 21 countries and territories in Asia Pacific, and constantly we are working with a lot of CSOs, a lot of multinational NGOs, a lot of UN bodies, and like consciously it is our values to update ourselves with key information what's happening around the world, like as how to make the best use of the platform. I saw there are some certain community features and all those things, so could you bit more elaborate?
So yeah, with that you will be able to access all the advanced analytical features and sometimes create your own transformation map as well. What I would suggest is that we have an introductory video, an explainer on how to access, use the platform, what its various features are as well. I would recommend following the topics that you're most interested in, which you can access through the Discover tab. In the Monitor tab, maybe I can even give a quick demo of the platform in that case, actually, if we have 2 minutes left. Okay. So when you land on the platform, you would get something like this. Let me just go full screen as well. So yeah, I mean, as I was mentioning, we cover global issues, economies, industries, SDGs. Based on your interests, if, for example, I'm interested in the future of environment, I access it. I want to understand what I mean by interconnected risks in the context of the future of environment. Here we work with the United Nations Environment Program, and for every issue, the experts that we work with over there would draft a 350 to 400 word summary over here, explaining with a few data points, empirical evidence, examples of what do we mean by interconnected risks. If you want to read a bit more about that, you can see the publications, videos, interactive data visualizations that we have produced in relation to that. This I found to be a very good, stimulating, interactive way of understanding. I mean, this is something we just published last week on flooding risk, which is becoming a bigger and bigger risk now with climate change. So it kind of identifies where it's kind of through a trend analysis over time series where you can kind of see impacts of flooding. And you can also find other sources of data and data visualization. And I mean, also, I think the advantage over here of the platform would be to see how these issues are connected to each other. So if I'm looking at interconnected risks, and I mean, maybe I'm perhaps just interested in environment or climate change, but also it provides you the discovery to go into other topics. Here we were on the future of environment, but how does international security, for example, play a role in this? Or I can kind of through that end up in a topic like cybersecurity. So it's also to kind of provide you with discovery into a particular issue. And I would also recommend accessing the Monitor tab. And I think here what we do is we cluster one of the most emerging themes, sources of, I mean, a lot of like diverse perspective on the commentary on emerging topics that is coming. So Facebook changed its name to Meta, and now like metaverse is a buzzword right now, but what does it actually mean? So we provide an explainer, like a primer from different sources as well on what that means. So that could be quite interesting for you as well. And you can also go and create your own transformation map, custom build it with the expert curated key issues that we have, add an image, title, description to it, share it with other peers. Once you do that, you have your own essentially briefing that you can use. You can use it for presentations. You can generate a PowerPoint presentation out of it or a PDF briefing as well. You can do advanced analytics on that, on how the research landscape has evolved on that on a quarterly basis. So I think there's a range of tools available for you. And then it's really up to you how you want to use it.
Thank you so much. Like that's really intriguing, and I'll explore more. Thank you, Abhinav.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone for asking your questions. Unfortunately, the time is up for this space. Abhinav, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much as
for
well.
these 30 minutes. And I hope to keep seeing you in our future conferences as well, and bring this platform to more young people in the region.
Thank you. Have a nice day ahead. Bye-bye.
Thank you.